The cabin sat on the edge of the woods, a quiet, unassuming structure of dark, weathered logs and a perpetually smoky chimney. To the members of the Eagle Creek Neighborhood Patrol, it was a source of endless speculation and simmering resentment. For months, it had been a blot on their otherwise pristine landscape, a symbol of everything they believed was wrong with their community. The woman who lived there, a young black girl named Lena, was an enigma. She kept to herself, her car, a dusty, nondescript sedan, and her only visible activity was a daily trip to the nearby grocery store. They kayet de hermet, the squatter, and whispered about her late-night visitors, the suspicious vehicles that sometimes parked on the old logging road behind her property. The patrol was led by a man named Gary, a retired construction foreman with a penchant for rules and an unshakable belief in his own authority. He saw the cabin as a direct affront to the neighborhood's ethos of manicured lawns and homogeneous perfection. His second-in-command, a twitchy man named Ken, saw it as a chance for adventure, a real-life spy mission. The rest of the patrol, a motley crew of bored retirees and overzealous busybodies, saw it as a chance to finally do something important. Tonight, Gary decided, was the night. They had received a call, an anonymous tip about suspicious activity at the cabin. The anonymous caller claimed to have seen a person climbing through the cabin's window, a detail that Gary immediately latched onto as justification for their intervention. He didn't bother to call the police. He knew the cops would just tell them to mind their own business, as they always did. This was a job for the neighborhood patrol. This was their moment. They moved in a single file line, their flashlights cutting through the thick night air like a clumsy ballet. Gary led the way, his chest puffed out, a walkie-talkie clipped to his belt. Ken followed, his flashlight beam dancing erratically. The rest of the patrol trailed behind, their footsteps crunching on the fallen leaves. As they neared the cabin, Gary held up a hand. They stopped, a silent, dark silhouette against the moonlight. "Okay," Gary whispered, his voice a gravelly hiss. "We'll approach from the front. Ken, you take the side. We'll not. If she doesn't answer, we'll see if the window is open. We have a civic duty here, people. We need to make sure everything is in order." What Gary didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the cabin was far more than a simple home. It was a fortress. The windows, which looked like old, single-pane glass, were a special kind of reinforced polycarbonate, bulletproof, and shut. The doors were solid steel, disguised with a thin veneer of wood. The suspicious vehicles that parked on the old logging road were unmarked government cars, and the hermit they so derisively called Lena was, in fact, Sergeant First Class Lena Vargas, a decorated veteran of the U.S. Army and one of the most lethal snipers the country had ever produced. She was inside the cabin, awake, not sleeping. She was hunched over a workbench, her hands meticulously cleaning the bolt of her customized Remington 700. The rifle was her baby, her partner, the tool of her trade. She worked with a practiced, fluid grace, her movements economical and precise. A cup of Earl Grey tea sat steaming next to her, and the gentle strains of a Miles Davis record filled the room. Lena had been home for a year, discharged after a mission in Syria that had left a permanent scar on her soul. She had come to Eagle Creek to find peace, to bury the ghosts of the past, to live a quiet life far from the chaos and bloodshed she had known for so long. The neighborhood patrol, however, was making that difficult. They had been a nuisance for months. Their late-night patrols, their incessant staring, their thinly veiled threats. She had ignored them, hoping they would eventually tire of their game. But they hadn't. And now, they were on her property. The first indication she had was the crunch of footsteps on the leaves. She was a sniper, a master of situational awareness. Her senses were a finely tuned instrument, and she could hear a mouse rustle 100 yards away. The clumsy, heavy-footed approach of the patrol was like a foghorn in the quiet night. She put down the rifle bolt and stood up, her hand instinctively going to the Glock 19 holstered on her hip. She moved to the window, peering through the slight gap in the curtains. She saw them, a gaggle of suburban vigilantes, their flashlights bobbing like fireflies. She recognized Gary, his overbearing frame unmistakable even in the dark. She saw Ken, his nervous energy a palpable thing. She sighed, a long, weary exhalation. She didn't want a confrontation. She just wanted to be left alone. Gary rapped on the door. A series of sharp, authoritative knocks. Lena Vance. This is the Eagle Creek Neighborhood Patrol. We've had a report of a break-in. We need you to open the door. Lena didn't answer. She walked to the security panel on the wall. A small, nondescript keypad that was connected to a network of infrared sensors and motion detectors hidden throughout her property. She disengaged the exterior perimeter alarm, a silent, invisible tripwire. That would have sent a signal to a private security firm in a matter of seconds. She didn't want to involve them, not yet. She heard Gary's voice again, louder this time. Lena, we know you're in there. We have a duty to this community. If you don't open this door, we will have to take further action. You're not doing anything. You pompous? Asked, Lena muttered to herself. She walked to the back of the cabin, to the old logging road. She watched as a car pulled up, the headlights off. A figure got out. A man she knew as her contact, Agent Reynolds. It was a tall, lean man with a kind face and a world-weary sigh. He was her only link to her former life, the only person who understood the demons that chased her. What's going on, Lena? He said, his voice a low, concerned whisper. My sensors just lit up. Are you okay? Just the neighborhood patrol, Reynolds, she said, her voice dry. They're playing cops and robbers again. They think someone broke into my cabin. Reynolds sighed. I'll handle it. Just stay inside? Lena, let me work. She didn't answer. She knew he would. She trusted him with her life. He was the one who had gotten her this cabin, who had secured her a contract with the government that allowed her to live here, to be a ghost in the machine. He was the one who had installed all the security measures, who had made this place her sanctuary. Meanwhile, at the front of the cabin, Gary and his patrol were growing impatient. Gary, fueled by a combination of frustration and a misplaced sense of righteousness, decided to take matters into his own hands. Okay, he said. She's not answering. Ken, let's check that window. If it's unlocked, we're going in. This is a matter of public safety. They moved to the window. The one the anonymous caller had mentioned. It was a lie, a fabrication. But it was the justification they needed. Ken tried to lift the window, but it wouldn't budge. He pushed, he strained, but the window held firm. It's locked, Gary, he said, his voice a frustrated squeak. It can't be, Gary said, his face red with anger. The caller said it was open. Push harder. As they struggled, a voice cut through the darkness, calm and authoritative. Evening, gentlemen. They turned, their flashlights swinging wildly, to see Agent Reynolds standing on the edge of the woods, his hands in the pockets of his trench coat. He was an unassuming figure, but there was an unmistakable air of authority about him. Who are you? Gary demanded, his chest puffed out again, his bravado returning. Agent Reynolds, he said, his voice a low rumble, Department of Homeland Security. And I have some questions about what you're doing on federal property. The words federal property hung in the air. A cold, hard slap in the face. The patrol members looked at each other, their bravado evaporating in an instant. Gary, however, was not so easily deterred. Federal property. This is Eagle Creek. This is private property. Who are you to tell us what to do? Reynolds didn't flinch. I'm telling you to leave. Now, before this becomes a much larger problem for you. A problem, Gary scoffed. We're the neighborhood patrol. We're here to keep this community safe. And who's keeping the community safe from you? A new voice asked. A voice that was both familiar and terrifyingly new. Lena stepped out of the shadows, her figure outlined by the cabin's porch light. She was wearing a pair of worn jeans and a simple t-shirt, but she moved with the grace and predatory stillness of a jungle cat. Her hand was on the grip of her Glock, and the moonlight glinted off the polished metal. Lena, Gary said, his voice now a hesitant whisper. What is this? What's going on? What's going on, Gary? She said, her voice low and dangerous, is that you and your little gang of wannabe cops just broke federal law. This cabin, as Agent Reynolds just told you, is a government-owned facility, and your attempt to break into it, to interfere with its operation, is a felony. Do you understand? Gary's bravado finally broke. He looked at Agent Reynolds, then at Lena, and he finally understood. This wasn't some simple dispute over HOA rules. This was something far, far bigger. We didn't know, Gary stammered. We got a tip. We thought it was a break-in. A tip from who? Gary, Lena said, her eyes never leaving his. From one of your friends. One of the people who've been watching my house for months. From the same people who have been harassing me for living my life. Gary had no answer. He looked at his patrol members, and they all looked away. Their faces a mixture of fear and shame. I've been tolerant of your little games, Gary, Lena said, her voice now a cold, hard fact. I've let you patrol the streets. I've let you whisper behind my back. I've let you put flyers on my car. But tonight, you crossed the line. And if you ever, and I mean ever, come on this property again, I will not hesitate to press charges, and believe me, the federal government doesn't play games with trespassing on its property." The silence was deafening. Ken, who had been so eager for adventure, was now pale and trembling. The other patrol members were frozen, their flashlights now pointed at the ground. Agent Reynolds stepped forward, his voice a calm counterpoint to Lena's fury. "Gentlemen, I suggest you go home. Forget you ever saw this place. Forget you ever saw us. If you do, we'll let this go. If you don't, well, let's just say you'll be spending a lot of time in a courtroom." Gary, finally defeated, swallowed hard. Okay. We understand. We'll leave. We won't bother you again. It turned and without another word led his defeated patrol back down the driveway, their footsteps now a hurried, embarrassed shuffle. Lena watched them go, her hand finally releasing its grip on her Glock. She turned to Agent Reynolds, a wry smile on her face. "You know, I told you this would happen. People can't handle what they don't understand." "I know, Lena," he said, a tired smile on his own face. "But maybe now they'll leave you alone. You've earned your peace. It's time they let you have it." She nodded. "I hope so, Reynolds. I really hope so." As the days turned into weeks, a strange silence settled over Eagle Creek. The neighborhood patrol no longer patrolled Lena's street. The whispers stopped. Her car was no longer a subject of speculation. The cabin on the edge of the woods was no longer an eyesore. It was a mystery, a place of quiet respect. Gary, humiliated and defeated, resigned from his position as patrol leader. Ken, now terrified of the woman he once called the Hermit, stayed away from her property. The other members of the patrol found new hobbies, new ways to fill their time. Lena, for her part, finally found the peace she had been searching for. She still kept to herself, still worked in her cabin, but she no longer felt the oppressive weight of 100 watchful eyes on her every move. She was a veteran, a sniper, a woman with a past full of secrets. But she was also a woman who had finally found a place to call home, a place where she could finally rest, a place where no one would ever dare to enter again. The cabin remained on the edge of the woods, a quiet, unassuming structure of dark, weathered logs, and a perpetually smoky chimney. And inside, a veteran sniper finally slept, her dreams no longer haunted by the ghosts of the past, but filled with the promise of a peaceful, quiet future. The neighborhood patrol had learned a harsh lesson, a lesson that had nothing to do with bylaw, and everything to do with the fact that you never truly know what is inside a person's cabin, or, in this case, a black girl's cabin, especially when she has seen more war than all of them combined. And she is the one with the real authority in the room.